Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is our first deep dive into Andor Season 2. Oh my God, we're so excited. We're going to be discussing the first arc 1 year later, Sagrona Teema and Harvest. Oh, wow. We've been anticipating Andor Season 2 for so long. I can't believe we finally get to really talk about it. We do want to talk about the fact that our co-host here, Goose, went to Star Wars Celebration Japan and apparently had an amazing time. So we will release an episode talking about that. But today we really, really want to focus on Andor Season 2. So
just got back from Japan and still a little jet lagged. I'm not gonna lie. We're releasing this on Thursday, but I got back on Monday evening because I traveled back in time. Almost 20 hours, and somehow still got back on Monday because time zones are weird, I guess. But running on fumes on Tuesday. We're recording this on Wednesday, and now is when I'm starting to crash. But I cannot forgive myself if I just went to sleep without talking about Andor, a show that we have been wanting to talk about since Rick's Road. All those, all that, how long has it been now? 2 years since the end of season 1. And now we're back. We're back with Cassian. We're back with Biggs, Luthen, Mon Mothma, and the rest of the gang. Like, Nani, what has been your anticipation for the second and final season of Andor?
Well, I mean, as we've said over and over, Andor is a really special show to us. Obviously, we love Star Wars, regardless of whatever it is. But Andor was, the first premiere that we were invited to as the Triad. It's the only one that we actually got to go to together. And Josbando tagged along, for the hanging out with everybody, not to the actual premiere.
Which is still the best hangout of all of them.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
100%.
Oh yeah, it was such a great time, and to get to see it with all those, with the audience, mostly of fans, and Diego and Adria son de los nuestros, so that gives it a little extra that we love. So yeah, we loved season 1 so much, and I think it's one of the shows that we also had the most fun talking about with, and that there's a lot of people who aren't even necessarily Star Wars fans love it as well. So yeah, we had a lot of expectations going into Andor season 2, and I can't express how amazing it's been. I mean, full disclosure, we were lucky enough to get access to the screeners of the entirety of season 2. Goose here watched the whole thing. I unfortunately was studying. I know. I unfortunately, because taking 1 bar is not enough, I'm studying to take the federal bar, and I'm a little short on time, so I got through up to the second arc, so I'm halfway through and I'm loving it. So we're gonna have to take a pause on our responsible speculations, and I don't know as much as Goose does, but I know more than you do after only the first 3 episodes. We're gonna try to keep this as spoiler free as possible and only talk about
spoiler free for future episodes.
Claro, for future. Los primeros 3.
The
first 3 are out.
Spoiler full on this one.
Yeah. So yeah. It's been such a joy to be able to revisit Andor with the amazing cast, the amazing costumes, the amazing storyline writing. Nicholas Bertel with the score does not disappoint. I mean, it's just, I think it's brought it to another level. The score of this show is insane. But what were you thinking, Goose, in anticipation to getting those screeners and, getting to watch Andor?
I mean, to that point, I have to say that I wasn't expecting that we were going to get screeners. To be honest, I thought that our days of round tables and screeners were over, because I thought that, and we're going to get political because this is a political show, more so than any other Star Wars, even though all Star Wars has been and always will be political. But Andor is a completely different beast. But, in seeing how 2025 has been shaping up with P-47 and the administration, and all the concerted efforts to dismantle DEI, and seeing how a lot of companies have folded in those efforts, in particular Disney. I was just like, well, I guess that maybe we won't, be
We're kind of out
participating.
of the loop
We're kind of
now.
out of it now, and
Yeah,
and I was fine with it. I made my peace with it because it's just like, hey, we got to enjoy so much up to this point that I can
yeah,
only be grateful of everything we had gotten so far. But lo and behold, we got it, and still very grateful, and still uh, think I'm still aware that this could be the last time. So what a way to go out with a bang that it's gonna be Andor season
appreciation.
2. Um,
Andor.
that
Mhm.
being said, I like you said, I watched the whole thing, and it was great. I'm not gonna lie, it's great to see something, early, and like be able to see it before everyone else. But and we were talking about this a little bit right when we were
Mhm.
right before recording, and I was talking about it with some of our friends that also got screeners when we were over in Japan, and yeah, it's great to watch it early, but you know what's even better? Experiencing it with everybody. There's a certain
Yeah,
magic of discovering things as a community and being able to talk about it with fresh eyes that you just, don't get when you're watching it in isolation. And in Japan,
yeah,
we had the screening of the first episode during the Andor panel. And even though I obviously had seen the episode before, I wanted to rewatch it with the fans because
yeah.
it's the best way to experience Star Wars. Star Wars.
It really is. Star Wars is so much fun, so much more fun when you
Mhm,
watch it
mhm.
with other people, especially other people that, are into it and you kind of want to watch the reactions and see them enjoy it as much as you do. So I do feel that I'm kind of really looking forward to the final two arcs that I haven't seen yet to watch them with Hosbando because I haven't been able to see him like react to any of it yet. He
Yeah.
hasn't had a chance to watch the first three that actually came out yet because, adulting sucks.
Mhm, mhm. And
But I
NDAs,
am
NDAs are, you can't mess with those Disney
yeah, we
lawyers.
can. Yeah, no, no. So Hosbando hasn't watched anything, and sometimes I'd be like, I was watching it locked in the room, like in my computer, and he'd
Mhm.
be outside, and I'd come out for like a glass of water, and he's like, "I heard you whooping. Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "I cannot say." so. So I can't wait for him to see them and everybody else to see it and to comment with us and let us know what they're thinking about the
Yep,
show
yep,
so far.
yep.
But before we dive into the first arc, I kind of wanted to talk about what you think about the fact that it's being divided into 3 episode arcs because we were worried about that a little
Mhm,
bit when they
mhm, mhm.
first announced it. And, I've watched half of it and I think it works. You that have watched the entire thing, do you actually think the release of them in like 3 episode arcs works?
Eh, it's a complicated, right? Because I didn't really
Yeah.
watch them too much in the
In
arcs.
that format, you just
I
watched
kinda
the whole
binged
way
it a
through?
little bit,
Yeah.
in maybe 2 days. It was a 2-day binge probably, so I
Mhm.
didn't, do the arc thing. Obviously, I rewatched it on Tuesday when the first arc came out that we're discussing
Yeah.
today, and, I'm not saying it doesn't work. Obviously, it does in the sense that thematically and narratively, the 3 episodes work together,
Hmm.
so in that regard, it does. For me, the thing that and it's not that it doesn't work. It's more of a selfish thing, especially when I compare it to season 1. I really liked stretching it out
Yeah.
for 10 weeks or however long it was and just
Yeah. So you have
enjoy
more
that
time to like
community.
digest and more time
Well,
to talk about it with
digest and talk
everybody.
about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
this is just going to be, boom, done
It's 4 weeks,
immediately.
that's it. Yeah.
And I want to and a show as special as Andor, and Andor is also the only show that has like more than actually no, I think there's another show that has more than 8 episodes, but it's the only show that has 12 episodes. And I just want to savor that, and now we're gonna go
Yeah.
through it faster than we would an 8 episode season. So it's just that part of me that kind of wants to live with it for a
Yeah.
longer period of time. But in terms of it working in the arc format, yeah, it does, absolutely, and I would definitely
Hmm.
like to know what, other people think about it, but what do you think of seeing 2 arcs so far
Yeah.
and seeing them you saw them as
Yeah.
arcs separately, you
Yeah. I
didn't
did
binge
see them
them.
as arc. Yeah. I saw them as separate arcs because I was limited in time.
Mhm.
So I got to really, and especially because, well, that might be a spoiler, so I'm not going to say it.
You gotta be careful, yeah.
Thematically, thematically, it works. I mean, like they do feel like kind of, um self-contained
Mhm.
mini movies that, take place in a specific moment in time for these characters, and then kind of it moves towards the next arc. So it works, but
Mhm.
I do agree with you that I would have had really enjoyed to spend more time with the show, because it is the final season of Andor. It's one of the most special ones that we've had,
Mhm.
and to only have these 4 weeks, wham bam, thank you, man, goodbye.
Yeah. Yep.
It,
Yep.
it
Yep.
kind of, I feel, doesn't do justice to the quality of the show and to the investment that a lot of us have in it going in, and especially considering that what Tales of the Underworld come out
Mhm. May
like
4th. Yep.
May 4th. So I mean, you have this amazing property, and then you have another one that I'm super excited about because I'm always excited about Star Wars animation,
Mhm.
like right in the middle of it. Like, couldn't they have separated them out a little bit more?
Allegedly,
I
it
don't
was
know.
an Emmys something, so that the all the
Oh, to try
nominations
to get
could get
everything to
in or
qualify.
something.
Okay,
But whatever. It's neither here
whatever.
nor there at this
Yeah.
point. It's done. We're releasing it that way, and here we are. And one of those things that I kind of want to start talking about is that quote from that first episode when we were at the CNR test facility, and Cassian starts talking, and he'll say, "You'll never feel right unless you're doing what you can to stop them. You're coming home to yourself."
I loved
What
it
a
right
great way to
away.
open,
I was
right?
like,
What a great way to open
yep,
this arc and this episode and the season as a whole, which I
yeah,
think perfectly set up the themes of the show and
yeah.
reignited the energy of the season and really set the tone for what everything else is going to be. What would you say succinctly, right? Your impression of this first arc was, especially compared to Andor season one, because I think there's lots of I think this is, at least to me, very tonally different from season one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially for Cassian himself, season one was all about him kind of being, you know, um, somebody who is against the Empire, but is kind of a reluctant participant in the rebellion, like not really being there, kind of more as a mercenary than an actual person involved in what's happening. And then, especially at the opening of that first episode and the line that you just quoted, it's kind of him being the bridge to other people that
Mhm,
were
mhm,
in his boots in season one to come join the rebellion, to kind of open the path and make them feel like it's okay. What you're feeling is okay. I already went through this. Now I am, a bridge to people coming in, because clearly he's not completely in the shoes of leader, but he is a
mhm,
complete
mhm,
participant in it and trying to help other people do that transition as well. So in that sense, that was completely different from season one. Also, we're getting a lot more Bix, which I really
mhm.
loved, and
Yep.
we're getting to see her go through the trauma of what happened to her in season one, and you see, the crew from, like, Cassian's crew from Ferrex, you know, having found a home, like not the most ideal choice for a home, but still, finding a home beyond all odds and finding a community that they have found people they can trust in and support them with. So it's kind of this, that first episode is kind of like, oh, okay, we're kind of, we found our place, we're still running from the Empire, we're still trying to rebel, we're active in the rebellion, but we've kind of found our spot. And then,
Mhm,
obviously
mhm,
it all
mhm.
goes to crap. But I mean, it was a completely different tone, aside from the fact that that entire scene of Andor trying to escape with the TIE fighter was just
Yeah,
amazeballs.
and to that end, I really want to compliment the production design team, especially Luke Hall, who is the production designer and executive producer on this series this time around, because season one looked amazing, but
This one
season
is,
two so far is like blow. Everything is bigger. Everything is better. I mean, that just the set of the where the Tie Advanced, where the Tie Avenger is. Sorry, it's
yeah,
just beautiful, and the fact that they built that Tie Fighter completely
yeah,
for interior and exterior shots, and
it's
obviously when we
insane.
go to
Yeah.
Chandrilla, the sets are so big and immersive. I
And
mean, it's
expansive and just great. Yeah.
it's it's like a master class, because I mean, God bless Lucasfilm for letting these guys just go crazy and do
Yeah.
as much as they wanted because the quality and the scale and epicness of the show is really not just translated in the story and the acting, which obviously is amazing,
Oh yeah.
but the production and the costuming and
The
and like you said at the beginning,
costumes. Yeah.
the score is just phenomenal, phenomenal, out of this world, out of
Yeah.
this world. But you mentioned something that I thought was really, really interesting, and it's something that, for those of you who are listening haven't checked it out, we were able to participate in some roundtables with Tony Gilroy, Genevieve O'Reilly, Denise Go, Cal Soller, Diego Luna, and Adria Arjona. And while preparing questions for specifically for Tony Gilroy, one of the things that I was thinking was exactly what you said, Nanny. It's just like normalcy, and I think that that's
Yeah.
something that we didn't really get to see as much in season one, which is like the day to day, right?
Yeah.
Everything from the normalcy of just having to go to work and having to do mundane life things is kind of
Hmm.
tangential in season one. It's buried within the action
Yeah.
of Cassian's journey, but it's really central, especially like
Yeah.
in this arc,
Yeah.
particularly with Bix and Brasso and with Mon Mothma. And
Yeah.
they're having to do normal things. They have to go to work. They have to do
Hmm.
things. They have to fix the evaporator. She has to greet guests for her daughter's wedding, and then Dedra and Cyril, they have to entertain Cyril's mom and everything. So I thought it
Which
was
was so
really
awkward and fantastic, by the way.
awkward and fantastic,
Those
and we'll
those are
talk
some of
about
my
it.
favorite scenes.
But I thought it
Yeah.
was so genius, right? To
Right.
talk to show normalcy in fascism, because
Yeah.
in many ways that's kind of like what we're going through right now, right? In an authoritarian, like in a wannabe authoritarian government that's kind of trying to creep into our everyday life. We still have to go to work. We still
Yeah.
have to,
Pay our bills. We
meet our
still have
family,
to.
pay our
Yeah.
bills, but still
Mhm.
somehow grapple with everything that's going outside of ourselves. So it's this weird tug and pull, and to see it in this space fantasy that's immersed in this fight against the empire is really, really telling. And I think that's one of the great things that Andor season 2 is doing, especially by being placed in this contextual
Yeah.
historical setting that we're going through. And I think Diego and Tony have said it, that this story is going to be relevant now. It would have been relevant decades ago, and it's going to be relevant in
Decades from
decades
now.
to come, because
Hmm.
unfortunately humanity kind of repeats its mistakes. But normalcy is interesting because then the empire, like Marva said, creeps in and corrupts and destroys everything
Gets into
that
the
we
dark
want.
places and grows in the darkness and then just festers. But yeah, I thought it was really cool, especially because there's such a cool juxtaposition of having like a happy family moment or
Hmm.
something, and then something like kind of horrific happening in the next scene. But then you realizing that that happy family moment has a lot of really dark
Yeah,
undertones
yeah.
going on with it. So, I mean, it's really good and, not in your face about it, but it's just kind of beautifully woven through, like the transitions from scene to scene
Hmm.
are almost completely flawless, especially with the use of the score.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I don't know, I think I loved season one, but I think season two even elevates it, but I mean purposefully, because they were in a very different place in
Hmm.
season one, and now we're seeing the evolution of these characters. And I think one of the questions that you asked Diego Luna about, like, what would their manifestos
Hmm. Hmm.
be, and I
Hmm.
really, really enjoyed Diego's answer that his manifesto is Rogue One. So
And
this is kind of like the setup for him to have his manifesto, and so we're just seeing the evolution of these characters, and there's still a lot of tension because out of all the characters, the only ones that we know for sure survive are Andor and Mon Mothma.
hmm.
So every episode is just kind of like, oh my god, and
Like, who's next?
Star Wars has no mercy. I mean, we're gonna get to talk about who gets
Who
in
gets
this
caught in
first
this one, right?
arc, which just devastated me. I was ugly crying. Like, why are you doing this to me? And in the
Hmm.
first arc, with such a beloved character. But yeah, but there's no mercy from Star
No.
Wars. So, every character's fate is on the line. And so I think it's one of the amazing things about it. It's kind of, where the storyline's going to end because we've seen Rogue One, but how we get there is a journey on its own. And I love that.
And I love that you said that you really liked Diego's answer, because I remember at the time when he said his answer, I was not a fan of it. I mean, not to say that I don't appreciate it for what it is, because I think it's pretty. I mean, it's a good answer. But I remember
Yeah.
the time being like, oh, okay. I thought
Okay.
I kind of wanted something else, but I appreciate you saying that, because it means that okay, then we got something good out of it. Um,
Well, and then Adria wanted to answer, but she was like, "I'm gonna spoil stuff if I actually
Yeah, she
explain.
she would
So
have, she would have,
watch."
she would
Yeah,
have,
she
she
would
would
have.
have,
Okay.
and
So
that is something. No spoilers for what I'm about to say, especially because since you don't know the ending, then I definitely can't
mhm.
say anything. But it is something that I definitely want to discuss with you,
Once we
and,
get there,
and I'll
and then
just and I'll just leave it at that,
okay,
because maybe it's interesting, maybe it's not, maybe maybe who knows, but
we
it's
shall
something that I
discuss.
definitely want to discuss when the time comes. With which by the way, that's gonna be a really good episode, because we're gonna be talking about it with our friend Ellie from Daughters of Ferrex, who joined us for an episode of The Acolyte, and she's
Mhm.
amazing. Got the opportunity to meet her over at Celebration in Japan, and she's as awesome in person as she is to talk with virtually. So stay tuned for that one, because it's gonna be good. But let's move to juxtapositions, because I think you're absolutely right. And there are two dynamics in the arc that I thought were so brilliant in terms of how they were structured and how they were cutting in and out from each other. And those were the scenes with the queen herself, when when the queen arrives, director Krennic, with all that diva, when Krennic walks in, and with that that drip and that riz, I was just like, oh my god, we're back. I'm so glad that we got Krennic immediately, and we didn't have
Yeah.
to wait for him to to be part of the narrative. And I thought that was just like so good. But that whole sequence of the top of the mountain
Yeah. Oh
retreat,
yeah.
which I was actually reading something really interesting about that, which I'll pull up once you react to what I said, because I forgot to pull it up before. But then that juxtaposed, like that meeting that's cool, calm, collected about all these Imperials talking about what's in effect genocide, and how to control
Right.
narratives around it and plan it in such a collected manner, and then kind of cut into the rebels in the forest, right? Who are they're trying to fight fascism and oppose authoritarianism, but they're fighting amongst each other and not
Yeah.
figuring out how to get find common ground to be able to achieve the goals that they want, which are, spoiler alert, the same goals as
Right.
both teams. And I thought that
Yeah.
was so telling, not just of politically where we are now in terms of the resistance against the government that we are facing, but also how liberals, leftists, progressives, whatever word you want to label the opposition, and how we like this team just keeps losing because there's no compromise, and everyone
Yeah.
just wants to be, to quote Saw Gerrera, sectorists, partitionists, you know. And I thought that was so poignant, because I've seen it, or I am seeing it, in like the political sphere and how that's occurring, but also like in our fandom spaces, right? Of like all these groups of either podcasters or YouTubers, or just people on social media who are supposed to be aligned in many ways with uh, their goals, right, in terms of social goals or political goals and whatnot, but just end up bickering amongst each other instead of bickering against the true opposition. So I thought that back and forth of like how
Yeah.
the the government or the empire is organized and effective in controlling a narrative so that they can achieve their goal, and how the opposition is fractured, was just genius. So I don't know if you had anything to say to that, if you saw it differently, but to me, like that's where my mind just went to directly, especially with cutting back and forth between them.
Um, well, yeah, I thought it was great. I'm also super excited that he was only on that planet, for that first arc. I thought they was gonna drag it out a little bit, and I was like so happy when he just like
Gets out.
bye. And those guys were just such total idiots. I mean, that it kind of expresses also how a lot of people with really good intentions can still do more bad than good,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
they were just idiots. I mean, and they're just kind of murdering each other for no apparent reason, um because there's no trust whatsoever between them. And I thought it was crazy at the end how they're going to solve the problem, and they're so serious about it, and it's like basically a version of rock paper scissors. and they're
Yeah, yeah,
taking it
yeah.
so seriously, um but what came to mind for me was, the double-edged sword of what is a revolution, because you want to keep secrecy, because if you capture a section of it, you don't want them to have enough information to tear everybody down and get everybody else into trouble. But the secrecy also makes it so that people don't know that there are other groups that are on the same side as you.
Yep,
Because,
yep.
Cassian was trying to explain to them, like, we are working for the same rebellion. And they
Mhm,
just did not want to hear it at all. So that's what came to mind for me, that, secrecy when it comes to a revolution is a double edged sword. And that's why eventually, we get to see that Mon Mothma is going to publicly become the leader of the rebellion, not just
mhm.
like this
Which is
secret
not a
background
spoiler,
figure.
everybody. It's not a spoiler. If you saw
Oh,
Star Wars
yeah, we've seen
Rebels,
it.
you saw
Yeah.
Star Wars Rebels, you saw Return of the Jedi, you
You
know.
saw New Hope.
You know.
Yeah.
But
So, okay.
here's I found it. I found it. Like there, an article came out today. I think was it today? Yeah, today on the Hollywood Reporter, where Tony Gilroy is talking about that scene, and he kind of literally tells what the inspiration for that setting and tone of the
Hmm.
meeting was, and it's basically from the Third Reich, and when the Third Reich was plotting the final solution at the Wannsee Conference in 1942, where 15 members of the German High Command secretly plotted the extermination of millions of Jews. And Star Wars not political, guys. It's
Right.
not.
Right.
So you
Never
have you
has
have
been.
you have that parallel
Yeah.
between the Third Reich and the Empire. But then what I also like is something that we've talked about before, about like how the Empire is detached from nature and it's this cold,
Hmm.
metallic and gray environment. And we kind of see it in the setting. It's like this mountaintop in the snow, and up in the clouds above everything, and then the
Separating itself
rebels.
as much as it can from
Exactly,
nature.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then we cut down to the rebels on the earth below, obviously below the clouds on the ground in nature,
In
even
a
though they're
forest.
fighting each
Yep.
other. But and then nature kind of hits back at them because they're not in harmony. We have the beasts in the planet that turns out to be Jabin 4, which what an amazing reveal.
That was
But
crazy.
the planet's not ready to welcome them, and it kind of attacks them because they're not in harmony with nature. So ugh, good writing. Good writing. Well done. Well done.
It
Uh,
ties in so much with what we learned from in Rebels, and
mhm.
so many things about how you have to have harmony with the creatures around you and all these things. I mean, it's been masterful, honestly. Um, so yeah, so I'm going back to the rigidity of the Empire.
Mhm.
What did you think of those domestic scenes between Cyril and Dedra and Cyril's mom?
You know, I thought I honestly didn't quite know what direction they were gonna take Dedra and Cyril when
Yeah.
once we saw the end of season one. Obviously, there was a hint there of like, oh, is there a connection that's happening here through the trauma of being rescued from
Well, and there was a back and forth we went through, because there were a lot of people that were rooting for them to be a couple, and then people
yeah.
that were like, no, that's not going to happen. And we went a little bit back and forth with it, especially there at the end of last season, when it's like, oh, is it going to be like a kind of like a savior complex kind of thing or
Mhm.
whatever?
Mhm.
So I was one of the ones that was like, I thought their relationship was weird, but I thought there was something there. So to actually see them, living together
Yeah.
now was just like, what?
They got it, and
They
I
just
was
went
just
right
like
there.
I was like, okay, okay, here we are. And I think I'm very happy about that decision because it gave us some of the most comedic moments of
Yeah.
Andor, like including season one. I don't think there were that many comedic moments in Andor season one. If they were, they didn't hit as hard as this whole dynamic did. Because what a funny pair. We didn't get to see them together in season one that much, but to see them interact so much. Uh, in these couple of episodes that we see them together, it's just
Especially
incredible.
in that domestic setting, like
Yeah,
both of them like trying
exactly.
to pick the outfit and being like, "Oh, are
Being
you
so
sure you wanted
rigid,
to come
yeah.
back? I wanted to like ditch my mom again." It's like, "No, we have to do this." And then the mom being the total bitch that she always
Mhm,
was, and
mhm,
Dedra
mhm,
having none of it. I mean, it was so great. It was exceptional, because you would have thought that maybe the power dynamic would have shifted because
mhm,
he's the one
mhm.
that saved her. But no, she totally wears the pants in that family. So love Dedra.
and we see her with her hair down, which seems it seems so
Kind of shocking, right?
bizarre,
Yeah.
but even
Hmm.
when she's relaxed, she's still tensed up,
Hmm.
which I thought was such a great choice. And I was reading about either reading or saw a video about it. I don't know. I've been reading so much, getting so much Andor stuff since the episode came out that I can't keep track of where I'm getting the sources. But uh, uh, Michael Wilkinson, who is the costume designer for both season one and season two, was talking about the process of getting Dedra's formal wear and how she, when she leaves work, she wants to be more comfortable, but in her own rigidity, she still can't be comfortable. So even at home, she still wears the same color palette as
Yeah.
work, and it's comfortable, but it's still rigid. Her hair's
Yeah.
down, but it's still combed. So
Yeah.
there's still nothing
Her
relaxed
face is
about it.
always like resting bitch face, which
Always
she
resting
admitted
bitch
to
face. Yeah,
in the
yeah.
interview that it's resting bitch face.
Which let's give
Yeah.
Denise and Kyle the accolades they deserve because they crushed it in those scenes, and I think I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's performance has been amazing so far, but
Yeah, but the interaction between
they were
them
so
is
good.
so fantastic because it's never what you expect it to be. So, and especially in the context of the show, it's just kind of such a breath of fresh air to just kind of watch them, you know, interact with each other and then with the mother and all these things. And I thought it was really great. I really loved those scenes.
And like you said, like then seeing the power dynamic between Dedra and Edie, Cyril's mom, and
Hmm.
see that confrontation, which
Yeah,
I'm so glad it happened so quick because now
I
we can
know.
just
Yeah.
get
That they didn't drag
hit
it
the
out.
ground
It's
running.
like, your relationship with him is contingent on the level of anxiety that you bring to our relationship or
So
something
good.
like that. And I was
Yeah,
like, oh my
that sounds
God.
right. I'm just like the
Yes.
writing is so sharp. You're
It's
like
so good.
no one talks like that, but I wish we all did. I think we all have we all would have that
Put a
cleverness
little
and
bit more
wit.
thought into our vocabulary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that scene gave us something that we've also haven't seen in Star Wars before. At least I'm not aware of, which is space fondue. We get to see everyone
Right.
just eating
Space
fondue.
fondue.
I'm just like, oh, this is great. We love when we see normal, mundane Earth things and be turned a little quirky, be turned a little on their head in a Star Wars way. But
Mhm.
speaking of Dedra, I wanted to hear your opinion on this because we know we were talking about that conference in the sky with director Krennic
Right.
and how Dedra's in the room where it happens. Obviously, yes, yes, I made a reference to Hamilton. Um, and she is part of this group that Krennic has assembled to, discuss how to deal with the impending situation at Gorman. And if you know,
Hmm.
you know. It's not a
And if you
spoiler
know,
at
you
this
know.
point.
Hmm.
Um, but Detra's behavior was very interesting on that one. What were you thinking about her behavior in that? And obviously, I'm trying to put my mind in the context of these three episodes and not think ahead and just see how see how I remember feeling when I was watching this. So I'm gonna do my best to just keep it to these three episodes. But I remember being very interested in how she was manifesting herself.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of seemed odd considering that all of season one, she was kind of trying her best to stand out and, get promotions
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
get, the recognition that she deserves. And she was really quiet with everything that was happening in that meeting. Um, but within this arc itself, you kind of find out after they leave the meeting that it's kind of because she didn't want to be dragged into that mess. She wanted to
Hmm.
stick to the mission of figuring out who Luthen is and the rebellion and all these things.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
feel like she's always been an out of the box thinker. I mean, she was the first one to realize that these seemingly unrelated events were pointing towards a more organized group that
Hmm.
were,
Hmm.
rebelling. And I think that she was uber focused on that and didn't necessarily want to be dragged into the Gorman project,
Right.
which I mean, he realized right away. He was like, you need to deal with the emotions showing on your face because I could tell from the beginning that you have an opinion
Yeah.
and that you're against what they're saying. And then in like one sentence, she's like, this is what you need. Done. And then obviously against her wishes, she got pulled into the project.
Hmm.
So I thought it was really interesting to see how that was playing out, and then obviously we find out more in the next arc. But
And who
but it
knows
is,
what that is? Who knows?
who
We're gonna have
knows.
to wait a week. We're gonna have to wait a week.
But I do think it is. I mean, even since season one, I mean, people have had um, mixed reactions to Cyril and Dedra in general. But
Hmm.
I've found them to be two of the more interesting characters, honestly, because as we've said over and over, like everybody believes they are the hero of their own story.
Hmm.
So they are completely convinced that the Empire is a force for good and they will do anything to further
Hmm. Hmm.
the
Hmm.
Empire. And you can't really fault them as, evil people because they do wholeheartedly believe that they are doing the right things. So,
Evil's evil when you're talking about genocide. And it's like,
well,
and it's
well,
like,
genocide. Well, yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, yeah, Corman. Yeah, it's like, oh,
I'm
we're
like,
gonna mine them into oblivion. Yeah, yeah, that's
it's like, we're
fucking
gonna
terrible.
destroy your planet. Well, which, by the
Yeah,
way, kudos to the writing team for getting in an unlimited power reference in there when Krennic says the Emperor's energy
yeah,
plans for
yeah.
unlimited power. I'm just like,
Unlimited power. I was like,
I'm like,
unlimited power.
well done.
Yeah,
That was our little Easter egg. That's an Easter egg,
yeah,
not a character that shows up. But it's interesting. It's interesting because yeah, when I was watching that scene, I was just like, oh, is she having doubts about
yeah.
the Empire? Is she, traumatized by her experience and the finale of season one? That now she's like, oh crap, I don't know, I want to be a part of this. So
Participate in massive
yeah, so
destruction. Yeah.
it'll be
Hmm.
interesting to see what happens
How
in
she
the next
develops.
how she
Yeah,
develops because I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
hmm,
I'm gonna find out with everyone as well. But there's a couple. I mean, we could be talking about this episode forever, but episode basically, like all arcs of Andor, it ends explosively, right? With Cassian coming back to Mina Rao, where where his newfound well, not newfound, where his Ferrex family is, and there's a confrontation. And there's something that I want to talk to you about specifically,
okay,
because there's been, as always, discourse on social media about something that happened in the episode, and it has to do with and it's a trigger warning, I guess, for anyone who's
yeah,
listening. We're gonna be talking about like sexual assault here, so if this is bothering you, just skip ahead. I don't know what the time code is, but we're gonna be discussing it now because it happened in the show and it's a real world thing and it's something that I think needs to be addressed. How did you feel about it? Because I saw there was a lot of people online that were uncomfortable with it and felt that it didn't belong in Star Wars. So I don't think, I mean, obviously I have my opinions on it, but I don't think I'm
yeah,
the best person to
yeah.
have that, to initiate that conversation. So I'm particularly interested to see like how you reacted to it and what you think about it.
Okay, so I didn't think it was out of place.
Mhm.
Um, we are in the middle of a tyrannical government happening, and that is one of the realities that women, especially, have to face. And it's not just limited to women. There's always, a lot represented about violence against women, but there's a lot of violence against men as well. So, I mean, that's something that's overlooked, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is that it it had a place in this arc, especially because you think you've gotten away from the horrors, especially somebody like
Mhm.
Bix who got tortured last episode. You think you found a haven, but when you're living under a tyrannical regime, there really is no safe place. So you never really know like where an attack is going to come from. And when the government itself is the tyrannical government, is the corrupt government, it usually is going to be the officials who are the ones that,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
because they have the power, believe that people below them in the power structure are not even people, they're things, and they can do whatever they want with them, which is what happens to Bix here. And I actually thought, because it wasn't unnecessarily like graphic or
Mhm.
anything like that, you don't really show anything that would be considered. like obscene, you
Mhm,
know?
mhm,
And I think it was really empowering for Biggs to be able to defend herself.
mhm, mhm,
Like you kept expecting in situations like that, it's like, oh, Anders gonna show up and save her, like in the nick of time, whatever. He shows up after. She defends herself.
mhm,
She kicks him off her, and eventually, you know, he ends up dead
mhm,
because he
mhm.
dared to attack her. So I actually think it was very well handled. And it's just a part of reality. And this show has, from the beginning, been very clear that it's going to be about boots on the ground, about the real people that are fighting a rebellion, and not necessarily the people with extraordinary powers. Just the ordinary people that get affected by these
Mhm.
horrible regimes. And I had no issues with the scene. I honestly thought it was very empowering for her.
Eh, I mean, to me, I mean, I agree 100% with you. And to me, it was interesting to see how people reacted to that because I mean, one of the things that I think about is how people react to other acts of violence, right? In Star Wars. In A New Hope, we see the mass destruction and genocide on an entire planet. We see in The Force Awakens the same thing. We see Order 66, Anakin killing younglings, and people
Younglings.
people literally fetishize that and make that a joke. How
Ugh.
murdering children is funny. We see so
Well, we
many
see Anakin
violent.
also slaughter that entire race of people.
Exactly. So and we see all those acts of violence, and I
Hmm.
understand that in our Western American society, in many ways, we're desensitized to that kind of violence. But to kind of draw a line of at this type of aggression
Hmm.
that is, unsuccessful, I might add, because she
Yeah, she
successfully
fights him off.
successfully defends herself. Is It's a little hypocritical in many ways, especially on a show that is tackling all those themes of the horrors of the empire and how these evil power structures will infect every aspect and corrupt every aspect
Hmm.
of our lives. And it is poignant, right? And to, in many ways, not showing it is kind of a disrespect to that very real thing that women are under attack all the time. In Puerto Rico, there's an epidemic of violence against women,
Hmm.
and are we not going to acknowledge, right, that that is a very real thing that we have
Yeah,
to
just
talk
because you
about,
don't talk about it doesn't mean that it's not happening.
right?
So by
But not,
not talking about it, you're kind of acknowledging that it's okay for it to happen.
yeah.
So I mean,
It's
you
like,
have to talk about these kind of things. Yeah.
and anyway, I was thinking about this, and I saw other people bring it up too. It's like sexual, this type of assault has been shown in Star Wars before. Just because it's
Hmm.
a little more subdued doesn't mean that it's
Leia
not acknowledged. Like, yeah, like Leia gets kidnapped by a giant monster slug, is stripped
and
down
is
naked so that they can put a
and chained down.
bikini up and
Hmm.
chained up. And I don't think
Hmm.
that Jabba the Hutt did that so he could sing her lullabies and read her
Hmm.
books to go to sleep. I mean, how many times do people also fetishize Twi'leks as industry workers, and being, also Ula in Return of the Jedi, also being chained up. But then when Jabba was angry with her, he fed her to his rancor. I'm just like, if that's not assault, I don't know what is. So yeah, I'm just like, yeah, was it rough to watch it? Sure, but that's what it is. It's rough.
Hmm.
So I think it's just interesting that the reaction that people did to that. I'm not saying that they should be fine with it, but to say that it doesn't
No, yeah.
belong, and to say that doesn't belong, but then be excited to see the Gorman massacre, I don't know what language
Yeah.
we're speaking here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's something that I thought was powerful, and it just shows, right, that, like Marva
Hmm.
said in her speech, the empire is a disease, and if
Yeah.
we
And
don't
you
watch
have to
it,
fight back.
you have to fight the empire because it's
Hmm.
gonna find you one way or the other. But yeah, it was rough, and I think
Hmm.
and
But
this
it
is
was
not
well done.
it was
It
well
was
done,
respectful, and I think it showed that women can be powerful even when they're victimized. So,
and
that is what it is.
and this is not a spoiler, but for those of you that are looking forward to the Gorman massacre, I trigger warning. It's not fun.
Hmm.
Uh, I w- it's a rough watch. So if this, if this was a lot, trigger warning for when that happens. Um, and another thing that was hard to watch was, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else before we move on
No,
to
we can continue to the next saddest thing.
the next saddest thing was, one of my highlights of season one was after Marva's speech, when that Imperial yells enough and kicks B2 Emo, having Brasso take that brick, smack a fascist in the face, and then
Marva's brick.
Marva's brick, and then release a battle cry and start the revolution in Ferrix. So Brasso holds a very dear place in my heart, and I thought he was gonna make it, man, but you know
I
he
really
got it.
did.
He
I
got it.
really thought he had plot armor. I
Same.
mean, for at least, the first arc. Because
I guess the first clue that he wasn't gonna make it was that he had a girlfriend.
I know, he was too happy. Star
He
Wars
was
is
too
is
happy.
angry at happy people.
It is. It is. That was brutal
That was brutal
to
to watch.
experience. But when I watched it, and I want to hear your opinion about when it happened, to me it feels very unceremonious. It's just like he died. We don't see how, we don't see the moment that it happens, and then immediately there's no time to process it. We just have to
Yeah,
get off the
because they have to
planet.
leave.
And
Yeah,
I was just like, oh my god, this is, I mean, genius in terms of like the storytelling about how
yeah,
that's war, and when these
yeah.
things happen,
You
it,
can't
all,
stop.
all deaths aren't this epic heroic things. People die, and then you have to
Yeah.
keep moving on, and sometimes you have to leave things behind. And I thought that was so tragic, but so appropriate too for the time
Mhm.
that that this story is taking place in terms of the rebellion. So how did you feel, besides great sadness for our great bear Brasso?
Awesome.
How did you feel?
I really thought he didn't get shot. Like we see him kind of like speeding away and then Andor shows up in the tie and you think he got away and then he's just like yelling for him and he finds him on the ground. So it is unceremonious, but at the same time like you were saying, they couldn't say to
Hmm,
do
hmm.
anything about it because they're being actively pursued. And if he wants to protect the rest of his Ferrix family, he had to leave. Like you see that Arya, Bix wanted to stay. And it's like, no, but we can't just leave him here. Like we have these
Hmm,
traditions, we have all these things to do. And there's like, no, we can't. Like, I get you. Trust me, I'm devastated as well. We can see it in his face in one of those
hmm,
final scenes
hmm,
as they're
hmm.
leaving that they are just like devastated. But it's like, but we can't really do anything about it now. We have to leave. And compared to that amazing, funeral march that we get to have
Mhm,
for Marva at the end of season one, then for one of the characters that defended, her essence during that funeral march gets just this like unceremonious end, which was it was so devastating. But it worked really well with the
yeah.
story. So I mean, I was ugly crying and was like, "Oh my god, what happened?" I was like, "I can't tell you." Um, but
No
but it
brick for
was
Brasso.
oh my
That
god.
breaks my heart.
I cannot believe you. I'm pretty sure I texted you right away. It's like, "Oh my god, I cannot believe they did that to our boy Brasso."
Mhm,
Um, but then in the context that it happens as they're leaving and there's just like the devastation in the Ferrix family, we get this really upbeat score from
yeah,
Nicholas
yeah,
Bertel
yeah,
that's
yeah.
insane with the backdrop of the
The wedding.
wedding.
Mhm,
And at this point, Mon Mothma's kind of losing her mind. It's like one of the only times that we've seen her crack
mhm, mhm,
and see a crack in her mask that even the husband kind of notices it when he sees her like jumping around and stuff like, oh my God, like what is going on? And it's kind of this Mon Mothma starting to realize that her actions have real world consequences
mhm,
because I mean, since she's kind of always sequestered from the people that are actually fighting, I don't think she really gets to appreciate what everything that's happening is causing to the little people
mhm,
and
mhm, mhm.
having to because of a combination of mistakes that she made and other people made have her childhood friend have to be murdered by Luthen
Allegedly, allegedly.
allegedly. Oh
No
come on,
body, no body.
no
So But we know that Cinta
And
is very good at her job.
yeah. And then, having her kind of, because she kept insisting, like, we're gonna find a number, we're gonna figure this
Mhm,
out. And Lucian's being like, no, no loose ends. You know what you got into, no loose ends. There's no going back from this. And her recognizing it during her daughter's wedding that she was opposed to because she doesn't believe in their archaic traditions, and
mhm, mhm.
which she tried to express to her daughter, which was also a very devastating scene when
What
she's
a
like trying to
great
tell
scene,
her.
and amazing performance by Genevieve O'Reilly.
Oh yeah, she was
Holy crap.
amazing. Yeah, I mean everything about Genevieve already. The outfits are an
Mhm,
elevation from last season as well. I mean the costuming for everything that was going on for the wedding, the set designs for everything that was going on for the weddings, the ridiculousness of the antiquated customs of the Chandrillans, like everything was
mhm.
was crazy. But then to just see her like she's not dancing because she's enjoying it. She's kind of trying to not
Yeah, yeah.
acknowledge the fact that she got her childhood friend killed by just like
A dance
drinking,
of chaos, basically.
and you can see it. You can see like the pain and kind of the madness in her face as she's jumping around, and that score and the fact that it ends, that arc ends in that
With that
crazy
yeah,
dancing with that incredible score was just like I was
perfect.
like, wow, that was an arc. Wow. So
There is something though that I'm not sure how I feel about, and I want to know your thoughts about it. It has to do with the costume design, and like we said, like the costumes and production on season 2 have been incredible. But in
yeah.
watching Chandrilla, and I thought it in season 1, but I feel like season 2 is does it even more, which is a reason that I kind of want to talk about it because I'm not sure exactly how I feel, but we know that Star Wars pulls from real world cultures and
Oh
aesthetics
yeah, you're talking about like the top
transform
knots and the
to
kimono
transform.
looking.
And
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
came back. I just came
from
back from
Japan.
Japan, and beautiful
Yeah.
country, beautiful people, beautiful things, beautiful cultures, beautiful traditions. And I remember I went to the oh my god, I forgot the name, and now I'm gonna look back. But I was in Kyoto and was in the Ishima, is it? Let me look it up so I don't look. Uh, the Fushimi Inari, sorry, the Fushimi Inari Shrine, which is like all the torii gates in Kyoto that go
Yeah,
up to the mountain, and me and my partner woke up very early because we've seen on Instagram and in the internet that that gets packed with tourists. So we woke up very early so we could get there and kind of beat everybody. And thankfully we got there and we had a beautiful experience because there wasn't a lot of people there, so we got to really enjoy the space. And it was a little, it was a little overcast and a little rainy, so you got like that mystical forest
yeah,
environment that
vibe.
you always
Yeah,
see. Got all those beautiful vibes. And one of the things that made it special was that there wasn't a lot of people, so you kind of felt the magic of the space and you
yeah,
felt how sacred it is. And then when we got back down, which by the way, we made it up to the top of the mountain. So we got over 30,000 steps that day. Anyway,
nice.
another point. The point is that when we got back down and we were like at the shrine up below the gates, all of a sudden packed with tourists. And it really made me sad because I was just thinking, wow, like this magical place that is supposed to be sacred to, the people that live here is kind of being desecrated by, let's face it, mostly Americans that don't care or
Or
understand
respected,
or
or yeah.
respect it. It's just a
Hmm.
photo op for many of them, and obviously I'm not blameless. I'm taking photos and I'm participating in tourist culture, but to kind of have that awareness, like I was hyper aware all of a sudden about that, and like
Yeah,
guilt of kind of not giving the place the respect it needs,
reverence it
and kind of
deserves.
fetishizing a culture, right? And now like watching that wedding scene and seeing like how hyper
Yeah,
the hyper reference and to Japanese culture, especially with costuming. I was like, especially with with non-Eastern characters, non-Asian characters. I'm
yeah,
just like, I don't know how to feel about it because I know it's not one to one. I know it's inspired. I know that there's other elements that are mixed in there to
yeah,
make it a little more alien and therefore Chandrillan. But you can't deny that it's
yeah.
very Japanese style with the with
Yeah.
the ropes and everything. Like you said, the top knots. I'm just like, I didn't feel great about it, and
And to
maybe
like
I'm
really,
overanalyzing
really
it.
white people, because it was like it's
Yeah,
the Chandrillans are in general very, very white people.
yeah.
So yeah,
So
so yeah, yeah. Some of it does. I mean, Mon Mothma's kind of an exception to that because her outfits are just not that. They're just
yeah,
usually like very elegant dresses and stuff. But
they're a good fusion. Yeah,
especially her
one. Yeah.
husband from the beginning. I remember we talked about it in season one, and especially like sometimes the aesthetics of their houses and stuff, how there's like usually like cherry blossoms or like
Hmm,
some
hmm.
kind of, plants inside the houses and stuff. So I'm always cool with an homage, but
Yeah.
some of it was a little, yeah, some of it did make me a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
But
I don't think it's. I don't want to go out and say it was wrong. I just
yeah.
think that we're on that line where
Hmm.
we can and should have a conversation about it. And I mean, maybe we're not the right people to have that conversation with because
Yeah.
we're not a part of that culture.
Yeah.
So it's something that I thought about, and I'm still thinking about, especially because I'm a little more sensitive now, especially returning from the culture which influenced that a lot. But anyway, going back into performances and how amazing Genevieve O'Reilly is, there is like that one moment that absolutely destroyed me, which is obviously before the wedding ceremony, before the dancing, which is when Mon is talking to Lita, to her
The
daughter,
daughter. Yeah.
and telling her about how her mom, Lita's grandma, Mon's mom, was drunk during their wedding, and she never had a chance to talk to Mon. And Mon then gives her the advice that her mom never gave her. Talks about how it would be an act of bravery to not go through with this, and
We can walk
she can
away.
walk away and
Hmm.
do everything. And then we see Lita. It almost looks like she's thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
Like there, you see the doubt in her mind, and all of a sudden she just responds with, "I wish you were drunk," which
Yeah. It's,
destroyed
I,
me.
and you can see it in Mon's face, like
Yeah,
just the I put myself out
devastation.
there
Yeah.
and you just kicked me
Hmm, hmm,
down so hard for trying to be a parent and save you from a loveless marriage like I have.
hmm.
And the fact that it took, I feel like, Mon to have so much courage to do that, because it seems like their traditions are so ingrained into them. But having Lita been crying the day before about the fact that he doesn't even want to hold her hand and
Yeah.
that she's already sad even before they get married. And so it gave her the courage to be like, you don't have to do this. I mean,
Hmm,
I tied you to it in part because of my schemes. So I
hmm.
feel responsible for this, but I am now giving you an out. And being like completely rejected in
Yeah.
it must have been like such a such a shot in the heart, especially then later seeing the ridiculousness of the actual ceremony.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean that's happened. Certain cultures still to this day have, the arranged marriages and
Hmm.
these kind of restrictive relationships where somebody has all the power and somebody else doesn't. So I mean it's a reality that still is around in our days. So I think it's things like that that makes us uncomfortable. M- you know, we should always talk about them.
Yeah.
So
And even without arranged marriages, there's always going to be dysfunctional parent-child relationships
oh,
that
of
are
course.
broken in one way or another. But it
Hmm.
was gut wrenching, especially because we've been so invested in Mon as a character, and then seeing
Yeah.
I mean, and kudos to the writing because that writing was set
Yeah.
up. It was almost set up as the I can't swim moment from Kino Loy in
Oh
season one,
God.
because it just builds to like, oh, Kino's gonna
I'm
get
still
out
not
of it.
over that. I'm still not
He's
over
gonna get
that.
out of it, and then oh, he can't swim.
I can't
And this
swim.
was kind of just like that. Like you think it really felt that she got through Lita, and that there's gonna be a resolution to this, and
Nope.
but no,
Nope.
there is no hope when uh, there's no hope in this show. Um,
No
but
mercy.
and that's something that I was thinking about when I was originally going to write a review for the show, but then decided not to write one and let these videos be the review themselves. But the only thing that I wrote was rebellions are not just built on hope; they're built on sacrifice, and I think that's what this show is really showing us. Rogue One, we
Hmm.
see that adage a lot. Rebellions are built on hope, but it's not enough to hope. You have to have
Be
actions.
willing to
You have to
sacrifice.
put
Yeah.
words. You have to put words into actions and actions into sacrifice to be able to, get the things that you're fighting for. And what bigger sacrifices is there than what Cassian is doing by losing his friends and what Mon is doing by losing her daughter and her best friend? It's just gonna be kind of gut wrenching to see what other sacrifices are down the line, which I don't know about. Well, I'm gonna have to wait along with
Hmm.
everybody else on this journey, but it's going to be a long journey, and we could be talking about this forever. But I think we've hit all of it. I don't know if you had any final thoughts
No,
on anything
I think
before
we're
we
good for
wrap
the
up.
first arc. Yeah, I think we're good for the first arc.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm kind of glad that our scheduling didn't work out to have a guest on this one, because this way it's just like just you and I. We
Yeah.
catch up,
First
we
reactions
have
in
everything,
general. Yeah.
and then
Hmm.
we bring in the
Hmm.
rest of the guests to bring this home. But this has
I
been
agree.
really good, really good, especially because we're back with our friends from Andor, so it's better to keep it intimate as a triad, a triad of two. Um, but yeah, I think unfortunately for now, the
Yeah.
end of Arc One, BBY 4, one, what was it? Uh, what
One
were the
year
names?
later.
1 year later, Sagrona Teema and Harvest.
Mhm.
We're closing that book and waiting for next week.
So until next time, we are Triad of the Force. Remember, like, subscribe, leave a comment, join our Discord. Let us know what you've thought about this first arc of Andor season 2, what you're expecting for the rest of the season, how it makes you feel in comparison to season 1,
Mhm.
how it makes you feel in comparison to Rogue One, how in general, like, just let us know how you are connecting with Andor this time around, because we are so far loving
Mhm.
it. Don't worry, we're going to be discussing every other arc. And until next time, may the force be with
Be
you.
with you.